Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked his weapon for the third time that morning. The USS Horizon had been his home for 3 long years, but today felt different. Today they were going to meet aliens for the first time in human history. The massive alien ship floated in space ahead of them like a silver mountain covered in lights. It was 10 times bigger than their own vessel and looked like nothing humans had ever built. Captain Lisa Hayes had been nervous, all week preparing for this moment. The alien ship had appeared near the Centauri system, sending peaceful signals in dozens of languages, including perfect English. Their message was simple. They wanted to meet humanity and welcome them to the galaxy. The whole crew was excited, but also scared. What would these beings look like, and what did they really want? Jake was part of the security team that would go aboard the alien vessel with the diplomats. He had served in 3 different wars on Earth before joining the space fleet. Combat was something he understood, but this was completely new territory. His plasma rifle felt familiar in his hands, but would it even work against alien technology? The briefing had been clear about one thing. This meeting could change everything for the human race. The alien ship was called the Starlight Harmony according to their translations. It belonged to something called the Ethereal Dynasty, which sounded important and ancient. The beings who contacted them spoke of peace and friendship between species. They wanted to share knowledge and help humanity find their place among the stars. It all sounded too good to be true, and Jake had learned to be suspicious of things that seemed perfect. As the shuttle approached the alien vessel, Jake could see strange symbols carved into its hull that seemed to glow with their own light. The metal looked smooth like liquid mercury, but solid at the same time. Ports opened in the side of the ship, and Jake felt his stomach drop as they entered the alien docking bay. Everything was too big and too bright and filled with technology he could not understand. The first aliens they met looked almost human, but with blue skin that seemed to shine from within. They were tall and graceful, with large eyes that held an intelligence that made Jake feel small. Their leader introduced herself as Ambassador Zara and spoke in a voice like singing wind chimes. She welcomed the human delegation with words of peace and brotherhood. The meeting room was a vast chamber, with walls that showed moving pictures of space and distant worlds. The alien furniture looked more like art than something meant to be used. Jake and the other security guards took positions around the room, while Captain Hayes and her diplomats began talking with the alien representatives. Everything seemed to be going well until the alarms started screaming. The lights changed from soft blue to harsh red, and the aliens began speaking rapidly in their own language. Ambassador Zara looked terrified as she turned to Captain Hayes. "Pirates," she said. The Krell Syndicate had found them and was attacking both ships. Jake felt his training kick in as explosions shook the massive vessel. The peaceful meeting was over, and now it was time to fight. The alien ship shuddered under weapons fire, and Jake could hear the sound of metal tearing somewhere in the distance. The Krell pirates were known throughout this part of the galaxy as brutal raiders who killed for profit. They must have followed the human ship hoping to steal whatever they could from both vessels. The aliens scattered in panic, and Jake realized they were not warriors like humans. Captain Hayes grabbed her communicator trying to reach their shuttle, but only static came through. The Krell were jamming all signals, which meant they were trapped on the alien ship. Jake and his team would have to fight their way back to the docking bay if they wanted to survive. The alien corridors were like a maze with passages that curved and twisted in ways that hurt to look at. As they moved through the ship, Jake could hear weapons fire echoing from different directions. The Krell had boarded and were probably killing anyone they found. The aliens seemed helpless against the attack, and Jake wondered if they had ever faced real violence before. Their beautiful ship was becoming a death trap as systems failed and emergency lights flickered. Jake became separated from his team when a blast door slammed shut between them. He was alone in a corridor filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. His communicator was dead, and he had no idea which way led back to safety. The sound of running footsteps made him raise his weapon as three figures appeared through the smoke. The Krell pirates were smaller than humans, but covered in armor that looked like it was made from black metal and bone. Their faces were hidden, behind masks that glowed with red lights where their eyes should be. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy and moved with the confidence of killers who had done this many times before. Behind them, Jake could see what they were chasing. An alien female had been cornered against a wall with nowhere left to run. Her blue skin was pale with terror, and her elegant robes were torn and burned. She was clearly someone important, based on the jewelry she wore and the way she carried. Herself, despite her fear. The pirates raised their weapons to kill her, and Jake made a decision that would change everything. He opened fire without hesitation, putting himself between the alien woman and her attackers. His plasma rifle lit up the corridor with bright blue energy as he engaged the three Krell pirates. They were surprised by his sudden appearance and scattered for cover. Jake used every trick he had learned in years of combat to stay alive against enemies with better weapons and armor. The fight was brutal and fast, with energy bolts flying in every direction. Jake managed to hit one pirate square in the chest, dropping him to the deck in a cloud of sparks. The second pirate tried to flank him, but Jake was ready and put 2 shots into his weapon, causing it to explode. The third pirate decided the fight was not worth it and retreated into the smoke. As the corridor fell silent, Jake turned to check on the alien woman he had saved. She was still pressed against the wall with tears streaming down her face that glowed like liquid starlight. When she looked at him, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. This was not just any alien. This was someone special, and she was about to tell him something that would change everything he thought he knew about humanity and their place in the galaxy. The alien woman slowly stood up from where she had been cowering against the wall. Her legs shook as she tried to compose herself, but Jake could see she was still terrified. The tears on her face caught the emergency lights and sparkled like tiny stars. She was beautiful in a way that was completely different from human women, but somehow familiar at the same time. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was like music, mixed with sadness. "You saved my life," she said through a small device attached to her throat that translated her words into English. "But you do not understand what you have truly done." Jake helped her walk as they made their way through the damaged corridors of the alien ship. She moved with grace even while injured, and Jake could tell she was someone very important. The way she held herself and the fine materials of her clothing suggested she was nobility or royalty. "My name is Princess Lyra," she told him as they found a safe room to hide in while the battle raged around them. "I am the heir to the ethereal dynasty and daughter of the High Empress who rules over billions of souls across hundreds of worlds." Jake felt his mouth drop open as he realized he had just saved an alien princess. The implications of this were staggering, and he wondered what it would mean for human relations with her people. Princess Lyra seemed to read his thoughts and shook her head sadly. "The politics of my rescue are not important right now," she said. "What matters is what I must tell you about your species and the terrible danger that awaits all of humanity." Jake felt a cold fear settle in his stomach as he listened to her words. The way she spoke suggested that whatever she was about to reveal would be worse than anything he could imagine. The princess explained that the ethereal dynasty was part of something called the Galactic Council, which included 13 of the most powerful civilizations in known space. These ancient races had been watching humanity for decades through hidden observation posts and long-range sensors. They had studied human history and culture with the intensity of scientists examining a dangerous new virus. What they found terrified them. She continued with tears still flowing down her luminous cheeks. "Humans are unlike any other species we have encountered in thousands of years of galactic exploration. Most races develop technology slowly and prefer peace to conflict. They solve their problems through negotiation and compromise. War is rare and usually ends quickly when one side realizes they cannot win. But humans are different, Princess Lyra explained as she looked directly into Jake's eyes. Your people have been fighting constant wars for your entire recorded history. You have weapons designed specifically to kill other humans, and you use them regularly. Even when facing impossible odds, you refuse to surrender and somehow find ways to win battles you should lose by any logical calculation. Jake tried to argue that humans were capable of peace and cooperation, but Princess Lyra held up her hand to stop him. She had clearly studied his species extensively and knew more about human nature than he wanted to admit. The evidence she presented was overwhelming and painted a picture of humanity that was both accurate and terrifying when viewed from an outside perspective. Your world wars killed millions of people, she said, but you learned to fight even more. Effectively from each conflict, you developed nuclear weapons capable of destroying entire cities and then built thousands of them. You created biological weapons that could wipe out all life on your planet. Most species would be horrified by such power, but humans seemed to embrace it. The princess explained that what frightened the Galactic Council most was not human aggression, but human adaptability. Other species had predictable patterns of behavior that could be understood and managed. Humans were chaotic and unpredictable in ways that made long-term planning impossible. They could be peaceful traders one day and fierce warriors the next, depending on circumstances. The Council studied your expansion into space and became even more concerned, Princess Lyra continued. Human colonies were established with military efficiency and defended with ruthless determination. Your exploration ships carried weapons as standard equipment, and your first response to unknown contacts was often to prepare for battle. This was not the behavior of a peaceful species ready to join galactic civilization. Jake felt sick as he listened to this catalog of human sins. Everything the princess said was true, even if it was only part of the story. Humans were violent and warlike compared to other species, but they were also capable of great kindness and sacrifice. He had just proven that by risking his life to save someone he had never met before. Surely that counted for something in their evaluation. Princess Lyra seemed to sense his thoughts, and her expression became even sadder. I have been arguing for years that the Council was making a mistake, she said. I believed that human capacity for violence was balanced by human capacity for compassion. I thought that if we approached your species with friendship and understanding, we could help you find a peaceful path forward. But I was outvoted, she continued, and Jake felt his heart sink. The Galactic Council met in secret session 6 months ago and reached a unanimous decision. Humanity represents an existential threat to galactic stability and must be eliminated before you can spread further into space. The extermination fleet is already being assembled and will launch within weeks. The words hit Jake like a physical blow, and he struggled to process what he was hearing. An alien armada was preparing to destroy Earth and wipe out the entire human race. Billions of innocent people would die, including everyone he had ever known or loved. His family back on Earth had no idea that death was approaching from the stars at faster than light speed. 50 dreadnoughts, Princess Lyra whispered, as if speaking the number too loudly would make it more real. Each ship is capable of cracking a planet in half with their main weapons. The fleet will drop out of hyperspace around your sun and begin bombardment immediately. There will be no warning and no chance for surrender. The order is for complete extermination of your species. Jake wanted to scream or cry or punch something, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting emotional would not help anyone and might make the situation worse. He needed to think clearly about what could be done to prevent this genocide. There had to be some way to stop the alien fleet or at least warn Earth about the coming attack. How long do we have? He asked Princess Lyra and hoped her answer would give them some chance to act. 6 months, she replied, but most of that time will be needed for the fleet to travel to your solar system. The final vote to confirm the extermination order will happen in 3 months at the Grand Assembly on Nexus Station. Princess Lyra grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength as she looked into his eyes with desperate hope. "That is our only chance," she said. "If even one council member changes their vote, the decision can be challenged and delayed. I have been trying to convince them that humans deserve a chance to prove themselves, but I needed evidence that your species could be trusted. When you saved my life, you gave me that evidence." She continued with growing excitement in her voice. "You risked everything to protect someone you had never met just because it was the right thing to do. That is not the action of a monster or a threat to galactic peace. That is the behavior of a protector and a guardian." Jake felt a spark of hope beginning to grow in his chest, but he knew the odds were still terrible. One human soldier saving one alien princess would not be enough to convince an entire galactic council to spare humanity. They would need something more dramatic and convincing to prove that humans deserve to live among the stars. Jake and Princess Lyra made their way back through the damaged alien ship to find the rest of the human crew. The Krell pirates had been driven off, but not before causing massive damage to both vessels. Bodies of alien crew members lay scattered in the corridors, and Jake could see that these people had never been prepared for real violence. Their beautiful ship was a work of art, not a weapon of war. When they finally reached the docking bay, Jake found Captain Hayes coordinating rescue efforts with the surviving alien crew. The human shuttle had taken some damage, but was still spaceworthy. Several crew members had been injured in the fighting, but nobody had been killed. Jake felt relief wash over him as he saw his teammates were safe, but that feeling quickly disappeared when he remembered what Princess Lyra had told him. Captain Hayes listened in shocked silence as Princess Lyra repeated her story about the planned extinction of humanity. The other crew members gathered around to hear the incredible tale, and Jake could see fear and anger growing on their faces. The idea that they had been marked for death by aliens they had never met was almost impossible to accept, but the princess spoke with such certainty that doubt was not possible. "We have to warn Earth," Captain Hayes said immediately, but Princess Lyra shook her head sadly. "Your communications cannot reach that far, and even if they could, what would your leaders do with such information? Build more weapons and prepare for war. That would only prove to the Council that they made the right decision about your species. There is only one chance," Princess Lyra continued as she looked around at the assembled humans. "I must reach Nexus Station before the final vote takes place. If I can convince even one council member to change their position, the extermination order can be challenged. The Grand Assembly has rules that must be followed, and a split vote would force them to reconsider. But getting to Nexus Station would be incredibly dangerous," she explained. The route led through 3 different star systems controlled by hostile forces. The Krell Syndicate had put a massive bounty on her head for opposing the human extermination. Other alien factions saw her as a traitor to her own species for trying to protect humanity. Captain Hayes made the decision without hesitation. "We are going to Nexus Station," she announced to her crew. "All of humanity is counting on us, and we will not let them down." Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he watched his fellow humans accept this impossible mission. They could have abandoned Princess Lyra and tried to reach Earth with a warning, but instead they chose to fight for a chance to save everyone. The journey began badly and got worse as they traveled deeper into alien-controlled space. Their first encounter came near the edge of the Centauri system when a squadron of Krell raiders dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of them. The USS Horizon was built for exploration, not combat, but her crew was ready to fight against overwhelming odds. Commander Ryan Bell was the best pilot Jake had ever seen, and he proved it during that first battle. The human ship twisted and turned through space in ways that confused the alien attackers. Where they expected predictable maneuvers, they found chaos and improvisation. Ryan used the gravitational field of a nearby asteroid to slingshot around. Behind the enemy formation, Lieutenant Kate Summers commanded the weapon systems with deadly precision. Human targeting computers were inferior to alien technology, but she compensated with intuition and aggression that caught their enemies off guard. Each shot was carefully aimed to cause maximum damage, and several Krell ships found themselves crippled before they could retreat to safe distance. Princess Lyra worked alongside the human crew, coordinating their defensive systems with alien technology she understood better than anyone. Her knowledge of Krell tactics, combined with human unpredictability, created a devastating combination. Jake watched in amazement as she adapted to their chaotic fighting style and even began to anticipate their next moves. The battle ended with 3 Krell ships destroyed and the rest fleeing in confusion. The human vessel had taken damage, but nothing that Chief Engineer Bobby Collins could not repair given time and materials. More importantly, they had proven that humans could fight effectively against superior alien technology when properly motivated and led. As they continued toward Nexus Station, the attacks became more frequent and more dangerous. Word of their mission had spread through the criminal networks, and every bounty hunter in 3 systems was looking for Princess Lyra. The price on her head had grown to astronomical levels as alien crime syndicates realized what capturing her could mean. Each battle taught the human crew more about fighting in space against alien opponents. They learned to use their smaller size and superior maneuverability to avoid the worst enemy fire. They discovered that human tactics based on surprise and aggression could overcome technological disadvantages. Most importantly, they proved that humans would fight to the death to protect someone they cared about. Princess Lyra found herself changing as she watched the human crew work together under impossible pressure. These people barely knew her, but they were willing to die for her cause. They complained about the danger and made jokes about their situation, but they never considered giving up or abandoning the mission. This was not the behavior of the monsters the Council had described. During a particularly vicious fight near the Vega Nebula, Jake and Princess Lyra found themselves working together to coordinate the ship defenses. She provided technical expertise about alien weapons, while he contributed tactical knowledge about human fighting methods. The combination was more effective than either could have achieved alone. I am beginning to understand why the Council fears your species, Princess Lyra told Jake as they watched another enemy squadron retreat in disorder. You do not just fight to win battles. You fight like every engagement could save everything you love. That kind of determination is terrifying to races that prefer calculated risks and predictable outcomes. Jake looked at the alien princess who had become so important to all of them and felt something he had never experienced before. She was beautiful and intelligent and brave, but more than that, she had faith in humanity when her own people had given up on them. She believed that humans could be better than their violent history suggested, and she was willing to risk everything to prove it. As they approached the final jump point before Nexus Station, Captain Hayes called the crew together for a briefing. Intelligence reports suggested that the alien station was heavily defended and surrounded by ships loyal to the Council. Getting Princess Lyra safely to the Grand Assembly would require fighting their way through the best military forces the galaxy had to offer. We knew this mission was probably suicide when we started. Hayes told her crew, but we also knew it was the right thing to do. Billions of human lives are depending on us, and we will not let them down. Princess Lyra has shown us that not all aliens want humanity destroyed, and now we have to prove that not all humans are the monsters some people think we are. Jake checked his weapons one final time as the ship prepared for the jump to Nexus Station. Everything they had fought for came down to the next few hours. Either they would deliver Princess Lyra safely to the Grand Assembly, or they would die trying. There was no middle ground and no backup plan. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Jake felt Princess Lyra touch his hand gently. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "I want you to know that you have already proven everything I believed about humanity. You have shown that humans will sacrifice themselves for complete strangers and fight impossible odds for those they love. That is not the behavior of monsters." The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Jake saw Nexus Station ahead of them surrounded by more alien warships than he had ever imagined. The final battle was about to begin, and the fate of the human race hung in the balance. Nexus Station was unlike anything Jake had ever seen before. The massive structure floated in space like a metallic flower with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Ships from every major galactic civilization were docked at its ports, creating a display of alien technology that would have fascinated him under different circumstances. Right now, all he could think about was getting Princess Lyra safely inside before the enemy fleets surrounding them opened fire. The approach to the station was surprisingly peaceful. Captain Hayes had expected to fight their way through layers of defensive ships, but instead they received docking clearance and an escort of ceremonial guards. Princess Lyra explained that even in times of great political tension, certain diplomatic protocols had to be observed. Her status as royal heir guaranteed her safe passage to address the Grand Assembly. Once aboard the station, Jake was amazed by the diversity of alien species walking through the corridors. Beings that looked like walking trees mingled with creatures made of living crystal. Gas clouds that somehow maintained intelligent form drifted past insectoid warriors in elaborate armor. The translation systems worked overtime as dozens of different languages filled the air with constant chatter. Princess Lyra led them through the maze of passages toward the central assembly chamber where the Galactic Council was already in session. Jake and his security team stayed close as they moved through crowds of aliens who stared at the humans with mixtures of curiosity and fear. Word of their arrival had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to get a look at the species that had been marked for extinction. They were stopped at the entrance to the assembly chamber by Council Arbiter Thexmar, who Jake recognized from the briefings as one of the most powerful figures in galactic politics. The massive insectoid creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His chitinous exoskeleton was decorated with symbols of rank and authority that marked him as a warrior of the highest caliber. "So these are the humans," Thexmar said through his translation device, and his voice carried the clicking sounds of his native language underneath the words. "They look smaller and weaker than our reports suggested. How can such insignificant creatures pose a threat to galactic civilization?" Jake bristled at the insult, but forced himself to remain calm as Princess Lyra stepped forward to address the Arbiter. "Honored Arbiter," she said with a formal bow, "I have come to present new evidence to the Grand Assembly regarding the human question. I believe the Council has made an error in their evaluation of this species, and I request permission to address the assembled representatives before the final vote is taken." Thexmar made a sound that might have been laughter if insects could laugh. "Your evidence," he said, looking directly at Jake and his companions, "consists of these few specimens who have somehow managed to travel across hostile space to reach our station. This proves nothing except that humans are capable of basic space navigation and small unit tactics." The Arbiter walked in a circle around the human group, examining them like specimens in a laboratory. Jake felt his anger growing, but he knew that any display of aggression would only support the Council position that humans were too dangerous to live. He forced himself to stand at attention while the alien leader continued his inspection. "If Princess Lyra wishes to present her evidence to the Grand Assembly," Thexmar announced, "then she must do so according to our ancient laws. I invoke the right of trial by combat to test the worthiness of the species she seeks to defend. Let the humans prove their claim to galactic citizenship through strength of arms rather than pretty words." Jake felt his heart sink as he realized what the Arbiter was demanding. Trial by combat was an ancient tradition that predated galactic civilization by thousands of years. It was rarely used in modern times, but the legal precedent was clear. If Princess Lyra wanted to address the Council, she would have to accept the challenge and provide a champion to fight for humanity. The rules are simple. Thexmar continued with obvious satisfaction. The Council will provide a champion to represent galactic interests, and the humans must provide their own warrior. Single combat to the death with victory going to the survivor. If the human champion wins, then Princess Lyra may address the grand assembly. If our champion wins, then the human ship and all aboard will be destroyed immediately. Princess Lyra looked stricken as she realized the trap that had been set for them. She had hoped to use diplomatic channels to present her case, but now everything depended on a single fighter facing impossible odds. The council champion would certainly be chosen from among the galaxy's greatest warriors, while the humans had only a small security team trained for basic ship protection. Jake stepped forward without hesitation, even though he knew he was probably walking toward his death. "I will be the human champion," he announced, and felt Princess Lyra grab his arm in protest. He looked into her eyes and saw fear and desperation, but also something that might have been love. She knew as well as he did that this was their only chance. The council champion was announced moments later, and Jake felt his blood turn to ice. General Krextor of the Void Hunters was a legend throughout the galaxy as an undefeated warrior who had never lost a single combat in over 300 years of fighting. He stood 9 feet tall and weighed nearly 400 pounds of muscle and cybernetic enhancements that made him more machine than living creature. Razor-sharp claws extended from his hands, and energy weapons were grafted directly into his arms, eliminating the possibility of being disarmed. His exoskeleton was covered in scars from countless battles, and his red eyes glowed with artificial intelligence that calculated attack probabilities faster than any organic brain. He was designed to be the perfect killing machine. The trial would take place in the central arena of Nexus Station with representatives from all 13 galactic civilizations watching from the safety of shielded galleries. News of the combat had spread throughout the station, and thousands of aliens gathered to witness what many expected to be a very short and brutal execution. As Jake prepared for the fight, Princess Lyra came to him with tears streaming down her luminous cheeks. "Even if you lose," she whispered, "you have already proven everything I believed about humanity. You have shown that humans will die for complete strangers and fight impossible odds for those they love. That is not the behavior of monsters or threats to galactic peace." Jake put on the basic armor that was provided and checked the simple energy weapon he would be allowed to carry. It was nothing compared to the advanced systems built into General Krextor, but it was better than facing the alien champion with bare hands. He thought about his family back on Earth and all the billions of people who would die if he failed. The arena filled with alien spectators who had come to see the famous human warriors that their leaders feared so much. Jake could hear them discussing his chances, and the general consensus seemed to be that the fight would be over in seconds. General Krextor had killed opponents much larger and better armed than one small human soldier. As Jake entered the combat area, he saw Princess Lyra in the royal viewing box, surrounded by council members who clearly expected her to be executed, along with the rest of the human crew within the hour. She looked small and fragile among the powerful alien leaders, but her eyes never left his face. She believed in him even when he barely believed in himself. General Krextor entered the arena to thunderous applause from the alien crowd. His cybernetic systems hummed with deadly energy, and his movements had the precision of a machine combined with the fluid grace of a natural predator. Jake had faced many dangerous opponents in his military career, but nothing that compared to this engineered monster. The combat began with a ritual challenge where each fighter stated their cause. General Krextor spoke of maintaining galactic order and eliminating threats to civilized society. Jake simply said that he fought for the right of humanity to exist among the stars. The crowd seemed amused by his simple words, but Princess Lyra smiled through her tears. When the signal was given, General Krextor attacked with devastating speed and power that should have ended the fight immediately. His claws slashed through the air where Jake had been standing just moments before, but the human had already moved using tactics that seemed insane to alien minds. Instead of trying to match his opponent's strength, Jake used speed and unpredictability to stay alive. The battle that followed became legend throughout the galaxy, as billions of beings watched a small human warrior face impossible odds with nothing but courage and determination. The battle between Jake and General Krextor was brutal beyond anything the alien spectators had ever witnessed. The massive cyborganic warrior moved with mechanical precision, while Jake fought with pure human instinct and desperate courage. Energy bolts from the general weapons left smoking craters in the arena floor, while Jake rolled and dodged using every piece of cover he could find. What amazed the watching aliens was not Jake's skill, but his absolute refusal to give up even when facing certain death. Every time Krextor landed a blow that should have ended the fight, Jake somehow found a way to keep moving. His armor was cracked and smoking, and blood ran from dozens of wounds, but he never stopped attacking. This was not the calculated combat they were used to seeing, but something far more primitive and terrifying. Jake had quickly realized that trying to match the general's strength and firepower was suicide. Instead, he used tactics that made no sense, to alien military doctrine. When Krextor expected him to retreat, Jake charged forward into the teeth of the enemy weapons. When logic demanded defensive maneuvers, Jake went on the attack using aggression to overcome technological disadvantages. The turning point came when Jake noticed something the alien engineers had missed in their cybernetic design. General Krextor. Energy weapons were incredibly powerful, but they generated massive amounts of heat that had to be dissipated through cooling systems built into his exoskeleton. If those systems could be damaged or overloaded, the weapons would shut down automatically to prevent catastrophic failure. Instead of trying to penetrate the general armor, Jake began targeting the heat exchangers and cooling vents with precise shots from his simple energy weapon. It was like trying to kill a dragon by giving it indigestion. But Jake had learned that sometimes impossible tactics worked precisely because they were so crazy that nobody expected them. Krextor realized what the human was attempting and modified his attack patterns to protect his vulnerable cooling systems. This forced him to move in ways that reduced his combat effectiveness and gave Jake opportunities to land more shots. The alien champion was being forced to fight defensively for the first time in his long career, and he did not like the experience. The crowd of alien spectators had fallen silent as they watched this incredible display of human determination. What they had expected to be a quick execution had turned into an epic battle that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. Some aliens began to cheer for Jake, while others watched in horrified fascination as he refused to die. Princess Lyra sat in the royal viewing box with tears streaming down her face as she watched the man she loved fight for the survival of his entire species. Every blow he took made her flinch, and every near miss with the general deadly weapons made her heart skip beats. She wanted to look away, but could not abandon him even as a spectator to his probable death. The end came suddenly, when Jake finally managed to overload Krextor primary weapon systems. The general's left arm exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal as his energy cannon suffered catastrophic failure. For the first time in 3 centuries, the legendary warrior found himself wounded and partially disarmed by an opponent he had expected to kill easily. Jake pressed his advantage with a desperate charge that brought him inside the reach of Krextor's remaining weapons. The two fighters grappled hand to hand with the alien using his superior size and strength, while Jake relied on speed and human fighting techniques that emphasized dirty tactics over formal combat forms. The battle became a savage brawl that horrified aliens used to more civilized warfare. In the end, it was Krextor's own enhanced strength that betrayed him. When he grabbed Jake in what should have been a killing grip, the human twisted in a way that used the general momentum against him. The massive alien warrior lost his balance and crashed to the arena floor with Jake on top of him, driving a combat knife toward his throat. The blade stopped just inches from Krextor's neck as Jake suddenly froze in place. The alien champion was helpless and defeated, but instead of delivering the killing blow, Jake slowly stood up and stepped back. The crowd erupted in confusion as the human extended his hand to help his fallen opponent stand up. "The combat is over," Jake announced to the stunned arena. "I have won, but I will not kill a defeated enemy who fought with honor." General Krextor accepted the offered hand and pulled himself to his feet with as much dignity as his damaged cybernetics would allow. The alien warrior looked at Jake with something that might have been respect before declaring him the victor. The arena exploded in chaos as aliens throughout the galaxy tried to process what they had just witnessed. A human had defeated their greatest champion through courage and determination, but then showed mercy to his fallen enemy. This was not the behavior of the monsters the Council had described, but something far more complex and unexpected. Council Arbiter Thexmar was forced to honor the ancient laws and grant Princess Lyra permission to address the Grand Assembly. As the alien representatives gathered in their great chamber, she took the speaker platform with Jake standing beside her, still bloody from the combat but alive against all odds. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, she began, and her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "You have spent months debating whether humanity poses a threat to our civilization. You have studied their history and cataloged their wars and concluded that they are too dangerous to be allowed to survive. But you have missed the most important truth about this remarkable species." She gestured toward Jake, who stood silent and proud despite his wounds. This human fought not with hatred or